Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. It's Mike from the Law Den. Today I'm going to talk about a new law that actually was signed last year and it became effective in July 22nd, 2025. This is the Louisa Carmen Medical Debt Relief Act, and it's really important to anyone who has medical debt or might have medical debt in the future, which is basically everybody. So, one of the good things that it does is it prevents a collection agency or a medical provider from reporting medical debt that's less than $500 and it accrued before the act came into effect. After the act came into effect, which is July 22nd, 2025, any medical debt that you have or that you accrue from now on cannot be sent to a credit reporting agency such as Experian to harm your credit score. So there are other ways that they can collect that debt that I'll talk about, but that is one of the major things that this act does. The other important thing that it does is that it caps that medical debt at 3% per year. So, for example, if you have an 18% credit card that you're paying $5,000 on and you have $5,000 of medical debt, you should go ahead and pay off that high interest credit card first, and that way you don't have to worry as much about the medical debt. You can attack that after your higher interest payments. The other thing is that it restricts wage garnishing to certain income levels, and that would be helpful if you are on a fixed or lower income. They can't garnish your wages as much as they otherwise would be able to for medical debt. This medical debt applies to physician debt, it applies to dental debt, and it applies to vision. The only thing that it doesn't apply to is cosmetic procedures. So if you were, for example, to have tooth whitening done, that would not apply. But if you had a crown done, for example, that would be applicable under this act. They also cannot, by they I mean either the provider or anyone they sell the debt to, like a medical debt collection agency, they can't garnish your wages or they can't take you to court if there is an appeal pending. So let's say that you had a procedure done and your insurance company says, well, we're not going to pay for this. We don't think that it was medically necessary. Or, they say, oh, well, we'll pay $100 and you owe the other, $3,000 or whatever. You can appeal that with them. And while you're appealing that, the provider or the collection agency is not allowed to garnish your wages or take you to court or do what is called collection action. Collection action has a couple specific definitions, like taking you to court, but it's also not limited to those definitions. So, for example, kind of an interesting story, after this law went into effect, I know of a dentist who had a patient, and the patient was in the middle of getting her crown done. And in order for the dentist to finish the procedure, he forced that person to make payment in full before finishing the procedure. Now, is that a collection action? Personally, I think so, but it's not stated specifically in the law. So just keep that in mind, that there are other collection actions out there that might apply, in addition to, for example, wage garnishment. But the idea is that they are not supposed to collect the money from you until after you have had a chance to appeal. Also, they can't make a collection action for 120 days until after the procedure. So, in the example that I just gave, is doing it in the middle of the procedure a violation? Yes, if that is a collection action, right? I don't know if it is. I think so, but that's just an example. But they should be waiting 120 days before doing any type of collection action against you. You also have to be allowed to have a payment plan. They have to offer you a payment plan regardless of your income. Now, your payment plan has to be at maximum 3% of the patient's monthly income. So there is a cap on how much you pay per month under that payment plan. And the provider or the medical debt collector has to offer you that plan under this bill, which is another really important thing that you can use if you have high medical debt. One super important thing that I want to emphasize is that if you use a regular credit card to pay for your medical service, this act does not apply. So do not use a regular credit card. For example, if you go to the doctor and you're paying for a procedure, and you use your Visa card or Discover, whatever, none of this will apply. None of it. So just keep that in mind. If you go in for a procedure, have them bill you, or if you have an FSA card, something like that, you can use, but do not use a regular credit card, or you will lose the benefit of this act. The other thing that is not good about this act is that it doesn't allow for a private right of action. And what that means is that if someone violates this act, you cannot sue them in court. Now, as a general matter, anytime someone, they name these acts after people and they put out a press release and this is so great, and it is a good act, but the problem is that unless any law is enforceable through a private right of action, it greatly diminishes its effectiveness. So in order to enforce this law, you have to basically complain to the Attorney General, and then the Attorney General needs to decide whether or not they want to take up your action and enforce the law against a particular provider, and that can be based on the Attorney General, how busy they are. Politics comes into play. Lots of things come into play there. So it's really unfortunate that they built it this way, but they did. So, and in general, anytime someone tells you that there is a new law that's out there that's going to help you, first thing you should look at is whether it has a private right of action, because if it doesn't, it's a weak law. I'm just going to say it. But there are good things in this law, so hopefully it will be helpful to you, and remind your providers about it. And if you do have an issue with it, you can get in contact with the Attorney General. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was informative, and I will see you next time.